Hello. How's it going, folks? Looking like Momo for a second there. Nice to see you, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Dustin Cormier. I'm here with my good friend Lynx today. Scratching up all my furniture and shit because he thinks he owns the place. Lynx, hey, quit that shit. Little bugger. My name's Dustin Cormier. Welcome to another episode of How to Rock a Campfire. This is episode 4 in the series. I've been doing this series basically all day since 4 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock now. What we're learning today is a little bit of what I would consider to be key knowledge points on the bass. The whole intention here has been to get you as a bass player from the plateau, the creative plateau of, I find a lot of bass players are guitarists in disguise who just watch what their guitarist is doing and just copy the guitarist. And they don't have a sense of what they can contribute to the creative process and to the song, to the groove, to the band in general. Sometimes it's appropriate to just do what the guitarist is doing. But what I've been trying to teach on this whole thing is how to start getting a sense for what a bass player is and differential to that. And also, for me, in order to properly know how you can really contribute to your band on the bass, I highly recommend that you learn theory. We've got a little bit of a breakdown here that essentially goes... That's not the right one. I guess we don't really have it in here, but essentially it would basically... whatever. I'll keep that one there because that's a good little key thing. But we go practice. Practice is your mainstay. Something that you can do without jamming with other people. Although you can jam by yourself with some things, but practicing scales, practicing playing along with other songs. We could almost call that jamming. Practicing whatever songs you know and going through them and keeping your muscle memory tight. Number 2 is jamming. Jamming with other people, jamming with other songs, jamming with funk grooves that you can find on YouTube that are just easy to find, and then playing around with a sense of like going to this chord. Gosh, I just always love to show these examples. We're here. You can see that I'm looking up. Am I still live here? We're all good? Yeah. This is an example of a drum loop. Hopefully you can hear it on my microphone. And what I love to do as a bass player So you can see I went from the first chord there to the 4th. If you've been following us in our theory, then back to the 1st. So A being the 1st, because I started in A, just sort of randomly. Decided to go to the D as the 4th, and then land back on the 1st. Do stuff like that, Just play around with the theory that we've learned. I wonder if you saw me going up to... What I did to get that drum loop is that I looked up YouTube drum loop. The first one here is good too, but I just went to the second one because it was just right there. And it's this slower rock groove that you can learn to do things with. So that's jamming. We've got practicing scales and such. We've got jamming. The third thing is theory. And you should be constantly practicing your theory. The theory is the one that most bass players I find, any good bass player knows their theory. You can get away with it with other instruments. Like a guitarist. The thing is that, like I always say, like a bass player needs to know you know, you can have that groove, and then you go to the G. You know, and then we land on the D again. That was a first chord to the fourth chord to the first chord, and then the fifth chord again, you know, and then bam, 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 whatever it is that you're doing. The bass player needs to know a bit of the theory behind what's going on there, so that they know what notes they can play and can't play, and that they can sail on their own. The guitarist can just like go like, and like if they hit the wrong note, they just like bend it up, and it's like, oh, good to go. That was the note that I meant to play. You know, they can always use their ear to cheat, and that's okay. That's part of their thing. It's because they're really on the surface, but the foundation of the house can't have any chinks in it. It has to be engineered and well planned as a bass player. So that's why it's important for you to know theory. And that's a sort of roundabout way of describing everything that I've just described in the previous videos. Although the last videos were still good. Now today, we've already talked about groove. And we've talked about scales, intervals a little bit, the notes within a chord. We've talked about the chords, and we've also talked about the key signature, which the chords sit in. For this lesson, I wanted to give you some runs. There's 4 most basic runs, just to get you started as a bass player, to start to combine the elements of what we've learned on the bass so far through this series into songs that you can jam and play with other people. There's 4 essential runs that I'm thinking of. There's lots of runs. Some bass playing songs are just it's just a runs all the way through. You know, some songs can be like that. Bum 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 bum. Sorry, bum 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 bum. Yeah. Bum 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 bum. That's like an example of a song that's a groove. And it's just all runs. All it is like the notes between the hitting points. But. You have to know, as a bass player, as we've talked about, the main thing is to hit the root note. Someone commented this, and I'm very happy that they did like that concisely. You hit the root note of the chord on beat 1. Or whatever beat you're supposed to. You can play around with it. It doesn't have to just be that. You don't want to be too frigid and rigid, but hit the chord when it's supposed to be played on the beat that it's supposed to be played. Everything else is just flash and dash. For example, with this little riff that I just fucking made up, we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I'm landing. This is just A, D, A, D. But I'm fancying it up. 1, 2, or 1, 4 is what I meant to say. 1, 4. And what I'm doing is I'm doing the first chord. What I mean by that, if we're in the key of A is our first chord, then that means that D is our 4th, just because in the do, re, mi scale, do, re, mi, fa, A, B, C sharp, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. The D is the 4th from the A, the 4th interval up in the A major scale, and that's how we conduct what it is that makes up a chord. The chord structure in a key signature. If it's in the key signature of A, we're going first to the 4th. Now, the run in between could be really whatever, and you could have a whole song made of runs, like I said, but there's going to be the important sense of which chords are moving through. The chord that you're in has to hit on beat 1. Everything else is your signature flair as a bass player, as long as you hit those important points where they got to be hit. Now, the 4 runs that we're going to learn today, they're coming from the sense of the fact that most songs, not just nowadays, but even in like the Beatles time, you know, I want to hold your hand, or like I'm a Believer by the Monkees, like, I'm just naming random songs, but so many of these old songs are founded on the foundation of a chord structure that involves the first chord in a key signature, the 4th chord in a key signature, and the 5th chord. We've talked about it in our last video. There's just plenty of songs. I guess I could fucking think of one. There's a great bass playing song that you should learn the bass riff for just because it's fucking awesome, and here it is anyway. How would it go? It's like, in this dock at Southampton. This is the first chord, E. E being our first chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Christ, you know it ain't easy. Now we're in the 4th chord, being the A. You know how hard it can be. First chord, back to the E. Now, the way things are going. Now that's the 5th. You're gonna crucify me. So we start that in the 1st chord, being E. Then it goes to the A, being the 4th chord from the E, because when we do our E major scale, I'm going to keep running this through your guys' head so that you burn it in your brain, because repetition helps learning. If we start on the E and we'd go do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, we're going to find that the E is the 1st, F sharp is the 2nd, G sharp is the 3rd, A is the 4th. A is this open string right here. So that's why E is the first open string. And so when we're doing the song, we land on the open E. That means E is the first note. E is the key signature is E. E is the first note landing on that first beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's the first chord. Now to the 4th chord, A. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're doing the same riff. 1st, 3rd, 5th, 6th, 5th, 1st, 3rd, 5th, 6th, 5th, 1st, 3rd, 5th, 6th, 5th, 1st. And that 1st, 3rd, 5th, 6th, 5th is within the chord. You know, there's 2 layers that you gotta know that we're talking about. There's the chord layer, which is E, 1. This is all the first chord. 1, 1. Now 4, 4. Back to the 1. Now to the 5th. To the 4th. To the 1 again. And that's all the key signature and chord structure. And it's 1, 4, 5. 1, 4, 5. Just like I said, that 1, 4, 5 is something that's been used. The Beatles, fucking everybody has always used it, because it's just something that's harmonically pleasant in music. It's just something that's just always there, because the 5th sounds good going back to the 1st, right? We're in E. Bum 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 bum. 1st. It's almost like the 5th has this tension, and then we love the release of that tension by going back to the note that we started on, which is the 1st. It's a common thing. So that is why when we're about to learn 4 runs. And these few runs are something to get you started as a bass player, because you can take that run and you'll find it all the time in music. You may not recognize it because you might be thinking about the chords, and the individual notes rather than just... I'm just checking my comments here. You might be thinking, you might get lost, and you might not recognize this pattern simply because you're thinking about the notes and not the numbers. The numerical pattern is something that can be used no matter what chord. You know, You could do something in the key of E flat. I could do that same song that I just did in the key of E flat instead of E. Because the notes that I'm playing, the numbers, the distances between the notes do not change whenever you change a key signature, right? So in this chord, I'm going first, third, fifth, sixth, fifth, first, and that's within the E flat note. We don't have to go through all the notes because E flat's got a lot of flats and it's confusing. But all you need to know is that if it's in E flat, you just need to know that it's the same chord, same riff, same groove. First, third, fifth, sixth, fifth, first, third, fifth, sixth, fifth, first, third, fifth, you know. And then we go to the A flat. First, third, fifth, sixth, fifth, first, third, fifth, sixth, fifth, first, third, fifth, sixth, fifth, first, right? And then it's the same thing. You could go to the fifth of that key, and then the fourth of that key, and then back to the first of that key, being the key of E flat. Same thing as E, just everything's brought down one tone. But you don't need to know all the notes, you just need to know the numerical maths. Now you might be playing with some friends, and they go from a D chord, and then they go to an E chord, and then G chord, and then D chord again, right? So those aren't exactly 1, 4, and 5, because that's a Beatles song. Ooh, I need your love, babe. I guess you know it's true. So I'm playing these implied chords within, you know, and there's lots of notes within the implied chords. The Beatles like to fuck around with the basic formula, but the basic formula is the first chord in whatever key, the fourth chord in whatever key, and the fifth chord in whatever key. And you'll recognize them all the time in country, when you're playing acoustic songs with people. You'll start to memorize that there's a certain time when you go from this chord, if you're in like A minor, then you go up to the fourth chord. There's like certain riffs and runs that you can play going from the first to the fourth, and then from the fourth back to the first, right? So, since the first chord, the fourth chord, and the fifth chord, like for example, you know, G, C, and D. G is the first, C is the fourth, and D is the fifth. Everyone knows G, C, and D, but that's coming from an even more primary code, which is G being the first, C the fourth, and D the fifth. Same thing when you're in A. Everyone knows A, D, and E. If you have a song where it's like, you know, bum 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 bum. Know you got somewhere to go. Why don't you come on home and stay with me? Now to the fifth. Don't you ever leave. Oh, lay down, Sally, and rest here in my arms. Don't you think you want someone just to talk with you? Lay down. That's a song that we might even just do that one just because it looks like, I think it's got like basically all the riffs. Although, most of them anyway. I was thinking of doing Walk the Line to show you guys. Yeah. As sure as night is dark and day is light, I keep you on my mind both day and night. And happiness I've known proves that it's right, because you're mine. I walk the line. So we could do it that way. That's the song that I'm going to use to teach you these 4 runs, because that song has a run where you go from the first chord, that's E. E is the first chord in the key of E, obviously. A is the fourth chord in the key of E, and B is the fifth chord in the key of E. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be in the order of 1, 4, 5. This song goes from the first, it just stays in the first, and just kind of chills there, and that's when he's like, And then he goes and just climbs right to the 5th and starts the verse in the 5th. It's creative songwriting, you know? As sure as night is dark and day is light, I keep you on my mind both day and night. And happiness I've known proves that it's right. That's not the right riff there, but you'll see what I'm getting at. For now, know that the 4 riffs we're going to learn today are going to come from the 1st chord going to the 4th chord, the 4th chord going back to the 1st chord, the 1st chord going to the 5th chord, and the 5th chord coming back to the 1st chord. Because, you know, these are also 4th chord going to the 5th chord. I'll teach you that one too as an extra bonus. We'll call it the five runs to get you started. Because since the 1st, 4th, and 5th are just the most common figures in songs, I want you guys to know as bass players, once you get really comfortable with getting the main groove going with your fellow musicians, knowing that you have to turn to those chords at the right time. It doesn't matter if you get fancy with those runs. If you are trying to do a run and it messes up your rhythm and you fuck everybody up just because you were trying to do that run, everyone's going to look at you and say, don't try to do the run. Just stay in the music because you're a bass player. I spent these, you know, we're at lesson 4 now. I spent the whole 3 first lessons just saying, don't even think about the extra fancy shit. Just stay in the groove. Stay and make sure that you're turning to the right chords on the 1st note, on the root note, at the right time. All that fancy shit can come after that primary glue. And you get that primary glue by jamming with people. Remember that. Or jamming with songs, too, on YouTube. Practicing jamming with songs. So that is why we're learning the 1st going to the 4th, the 4th coming back to the 1st, the 1st going to the 5th, and then the 5th going back to the 1st. Because those transfers, those runs, are used everywhere for you as a bass player. One thing I forgot to say is feel free. The video is out of focus. Is that still true, Jeff? Do you think that was just for one moment, or is the video out of focus? Gosh, I hope not. Right now my previewer is being a little bit silly and that's not really showing me. Please, if you're watching, it's still out of focus, Jeff? Really? I wonder why. Okay. Could be a weird transference thing. Okay, sorry, Jeff, buddy. I hope that you can still see it. Okay. Maybe it's just a weird thing, weird transfer going from my computer to yours. But everything looks like it's okay on my end, so I'm just gonna keep plowing through. But to everybody else, thank you, David Jones, for contributing. It's, you know, community thing. We all gotta work on this together because I'm always trying to learn how to deal with this damn technology. But for anybody watching live, feel free to make a comment, and I'll try to get at it with due diligence as we relate it to the theme of today's topic. Before I get yapping too much, let's talk about these 4 riffs. We're going to talk about them first in this song, Walk the Line, because like all of them are in there. And then we're also going to expand around and we're going to see how the example of these main runs are found in other songs. Let's start off with Walk the Line. So, we're in the key of E. E being our first note. We're going to do, instead of doing the low E, we're going to go to this higher octave of E on the A string, 7th fret. Okay? So, it starts off with the 1-5 groove that you should have heard from our previous video, where we go 1, 5, 1, 1st, 5th, 1st, 5th, 1st, fifth, and that's when Johnny Cash is like, as sure as night. Okay, so we could have technically gone to that first one, but I don't do the run on the going to the fifth right away. When he starts on the first verse, he starts it on the fifth, and that's the B. Okay, as sure as night is dark and day is light, I keep you on my mind both day and night. So you can see that there's an implied box going on here, and it's very simply the E major scale. There is the secret, ladies and gentlemen. If you know your theory, then this stuff you don't even have to friggin' think about it. But what this is the E major scale being played within chords landing on the first note. So, when we start in the B, we start on the fifth. As sure as night is dark. So that's first, fifth, first, bum, bum, bum. Since we're in the key of E, it's good for you to know that the key of E has 4 sharps. This is the part of the theory that I know that we just, it would really help you a lot to get into this sense of theory. Because I have memorized going from the B to the E in a major key, the key of E. I know that if I'm going to go from the fifth to go back to the first, I know that code. So, like, I don't even have to think about the sharps or flats or anything. I just know the code. But in order for you to know the code, I learned that code because I was in the key of, I was in the B, and I thought, okay, we're going to the E now. So what kind of run can I do to land on that E? Well, there's only so many notes in between the B and the E. There's the B, the C sharp, the D sharp, and the E, right? So I knew that there are notes that I could play in between, but how do I know if it's like, do I go to the second, do I go to the second fret after the B, or do I go to the first fret? Bum, 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 bum. Or do I go to the D? Because the D is like the 7th of E. So if I'm in the B and I want to climb up, how do I know that I'm not supposed to go to the minor note? You can hear that it's wrong. Bum, 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 bum. If your ear's in tune, you'll hear that that's the wrong note. Because it's a major song. So, since it's in the key of E major, it would be good for you as a bass player to learn when you're doing this first run, because we're from the 5th to the 1st. That's our first run. We're in the 5th chord of the key of E, which is B. And when we're going from the B to the E, there's a certain set of notes that we're supposed to play. What those notes are is the key of the E major scale. If I was to show you all of the notes, every note that's available in this song, it would be B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp. No, sorry. Then it'd be A and then B. Okay? So all those notes, the key to the secret sauce, is that it's the E. And there's only 4 sharps in the key of E. Right? So when you're going through this, you have to know the notes on the bass. And you have to go from the B. Now if you're traveling up to the E, you're going to the next note up. It's going to be either C or C sharp, right? Because the D is its own note. So you're going up to the next interval. What should it be? Well, we know that the C is sharp in the key of E, because we're in the key of E. So we're not going to go to the C major. This 7th fret here on the E string is B. The next note up would be C major. But we know that that's not in the E major scale. What's in the E major scale after the B is the C sharp. And then, now what do we play from there? Do we play the D or the D sharp? Well, we know in the key of E that the D is sharp because there's 4 sharps in the key of E. And you got to know which notes are sharp in the E scale. But once you know that little code, all you got to do is look it up. Then you'll know that if you're traveling from the B to the E, you've just got to keep this. You got to go to the C sharp and the D sharp to go to the E. Now, if this has gotten you a little confused, I would say don't get discouraged because, again, we don't need to look at the individual notes. All we need to memorize is the pattern. I hope I didn't lose you there thinking that, oh, fuck, I got to know this fucking E sharp shit. Well, there's no E sharp, but you know, the theory shit. I always say that you do and that you should. But if you memorize this pattern, this is a riff, a run to get you started that you can take anywhere else. You could even do this in the key of C. I probably should, just so you can see that you don't need to know the sharps. But this song is in the key of E, so I'm going to show it to you in the key of E the way it was written. So essentially, though, when we're coming from the 5th to the 1st, you put your fingers so that each finger takes up a fret. Your second finger always takes the root note, right? B is our root note right now. Let your second finger take it, because then your first finger is going to be ready for the third of the root note. That's something that you'll just always do. As a bass player, your second finger is doing like the root notes, because that lets your first finger be there for that note, which is so commonly used in all these runs, which is the 1 string up, 1 fret back. That figure is used all the time, right? If B is our first note, you go down 1 string, up 1 string, excuse me, and then 1 fret back. And that will land you on a note that's commonly used. So in order for us to be ready for the notes that we're going to play in all of these riffs, it's always the same. Whether you're in E or whether you're down here in C, right? If you're playing the song in C, you would go from the G, as sure as night is dark and day is light, right? Same thing, is that your middle finger takes the root note and you let your first finger be on the fret behind it, so that each of your fingers is taking up one of these frets so that they're ready to play the notes that they got to play. Now, I am going to show you guys, just so that you have a little bit of hope, thinking that you're getting lost with the sharps and stuff. We'll do the song in the key of C after, so you can see what I mean. So, right now, we're in the E. We start the verse on the 5th of the E chord. So we're climbing right now from the 5th chord in the key signature to the first note, to the first chord in the key signature. As sure as night is dark and day is light. As much as I did say that you want to have each hand sort of ready, once we get up to the E, it'll be this whole finger on each fret thing will make sense. But you can't let the I totally just said that you're supposed to have every finger like this. But you'll notice when I'm playing 1-5, I use my first finger to be the first note, and then my third finger to be the 5th. As sure as night is dark and... As long as when I come back to the E, I land back on my middle finger again. When it comes to using which finger, sometimes you just gotta know. You could use any finger you want as long as your fingers are ready for the next chord. So whenever I do the 1-5 in anything, that involves me doing the first and then going up to the higher 5th, like this, in B. We're going from this is the 5th of the first, and then this is the 5th of the B chord. I use my first finger as the first note, and then my third finger is the 5th note. As sure as night is dark and day is light. That's right. So I'm using my pinky. As soon as I put my pinky on the 2nd fret after the B, that gets everything ready for this next part where the E is being played with my 2nd finger. Because even when I go up to the A, I keep them in that formation. The reason is because when I come to the E, after I come from the B, now I'm in the E, I'm not going to go to the high 5th. I'm going to go to the low 5th. The only time I go to the high 5th is when I'm on the E string, really. So I'm in the E chord. I'll do the formation I was talking about, where my 2nd finger is on the root note, and my 1st finger is on the fret behind that. My 3rd finger is on the fret ahead of it, and my 4th finger is 2 frets ahead of that 2nd finger on the root note. Right? So, let's start off again on this song in B, Johnny Cash, going from the 5th to the 1st. As sure as night is dark and day is light. And then back down from the 1st down to the 5th. I keep you on my mind both day and night. And happiness. I'm trying to get you the proper light here, because unfortunately my light is right in the way. Boom, boom, boom. As sure as night is dark and day is light. I keep you on my mind both day and night. Blah. So you guys see what I mean there, is that we're keeping it in the E key signature. And then as soon as we go to the A, being the 4th chord, we do the same build up. Bum, bum, bum. We go 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Bum, 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 bum. Hopefully I'm not making this too silly and confusing. I'm going to try to, I could have just done a lesson on this particular song, but now that you guys see the runs from the 1st to the 4th, 4th to the 1st, 1st to the 5th, 5th to the 1st, I want to kind of break them down in a different key because it's confusing in the key of E. And I'll just show you different examples of these. Essentially, let me think of another one now. A common one is when we're running from the low G, for example, coming up to the C chord. G, G, A, B, C, right? So this could be, we were just doing Cocaine Blues today. I heard it one morning while making the rounds. I took a shot of cocaine and I shot my woman down. It looks like, basically I'm going C, B, A, G. Okay, and then it's following the major sort of scale. So it's always the 1 fret behind, and then 2 frets down, and then another 2 frets down. You can see this transferred up here is the same thing. Heard it one morning while making the rounds. I took a shot of cocaine and I shot my woman down. Trying to explain that you're going from the 8th to the 7th to the 6th to the 5th. That is the progression going from the 1st chord to the 4th chord, coming down. Bum, 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 bum. Sorry, the 5th. So easy to get lost in these numbers. When you're in the 1st chord, any chord of any sort, any song of any sort, when you are going down to the 5th chord in the chord structure, it's going to be, you run usually with, by hitting the 1st chord, the major 7th, the 6th, and then the 5th being the G. I took a shot of cocaine and away I run. I run ahead, but I run too slow. Bum, 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 bum. So that's 5th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 1st again, right? That's the point that I'm kind of trying to show here, is that there's a set riff, and it's the bum, 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 bum. And it's the major scale riff, major scale run, like that we're going to there. Now, if you are in a song and it goes to, let's say you're in a song that's like G, but it's like a D minor vibe. Like, here's a good example. You guys will know this one. Sam Roberts. Cause it's nothing to me. There's a man up there thinks he's tougher than me, but I've got eyes that can see through fantasy. So that's like D minor. I'll just show you what I mean on the guitar just so we can get a little bit of reference, because it's hard to on the bass. I'm noticing that. It's hard to get a sense of the song. I've got eyes that can see through fantasy. So that's D minor, C, G. Now this has more of like a key of C sort of jive to it. But essentially, you've got to be careful because that D minor is there. So since it's minor, you want, when you go to an F note, you want it to be the natural F instead of the F sharp, because this song has the D minor in it, so it's kind of like in the key of C-ish sort of thing, more than anything. So when we're doing a run in a song, when we're going from that G chord, you can see that that's the G, G, F, D, C, D, and then that's back in the D, F, D, C, G. I'm doing these notes, and there's an F there. I'm not hitting the F sharp because the F sharp is in the key of G, and you know, you've got to consider the key of the song whenever you're doing these runs, because it's the key of the song that's going to make sure that you're on the right note in time with, in musically, theoretically, hitting the right note in time with the rest of the musicians. And you'll learn what exactly it is that makes that as you play bass more and more, okay? So, I'm gonna hit these riffs right on the nail right here. I can tell that my mind is just like wandering. I'm trying to get at this main point, which is the runs of these main runs that we've been talking about, okay? Now, I feel like I said the E got a little confusing, so let's consider if we're in the key of C, and we're going to go to the 4th. It's going to be the same notes in the key of C, the same intervals as it would be in the key of D or in the key of E, okay? So let's start in the key of C. If we're going to go from the C, we're going to climb the major scale-wise we're going to go the first, second, third, fifth, fourth. Can't count today. First, second, third, fourth of the chord. And then that will, first note should land on the first beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Now the F is the fourth chord in the key of C. We're landing on the F chord, and we're using the first, second, third to run up to that fourth note. Then we get on the fourth note, 1, 2, fourth, fourth, third, second, first again, right? And then from the first to the fifth, we basically follow the same kind of pattern with our fingers, right? So we go first, seventh, sixth, fifth. That leads back down to the fifth of the chord. Fifth, fifth, back to the first. And you use the major scale to contain the run. That's what the run is based on. It's the same thing if you're in the key of D. Bum, ba, bum, 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 ba, bum, 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 ba, bum, bum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Right? If you're in any kind of song, I wish I could think of another one that's like going to the fourth. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see that all I'm doing is just keeping those same major scale intervals, going from the first chord to the fourth chord to the first chord back down to the fifth. Same kind of vibe. And then also, when you're going from the fifth, you also want to consider if you're going from the first down to the fourth. And that was one we talked about in our previous video when we were doing I got everything that a man could want. I got more than I could ask for. That one is the tricky one because it's when you go from the first to the down to the fourth that you have to pass the seventh, and the seventh is usually flattened when you're going from the first down to the fifth. I mean, if you're in the key of D, instead of going to the C sharp, which is this major seventh, you want to hit the minor seventh on your way down. They call it the dominant seventh. Dun, dun, down, 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 down. And that's what leads you cleanly to the fourth. And then from there, from the fourth, you can just go back up to the first again. Well, you could fall down from the fourth, but if you're going to go from the fourth up to the first, that's a weird one because that's not one that we usually do. Boom, 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 boom. But you wouldn't hit the minor seventh going back up because the minor seventh is only when you're going from the first down to the fourth, right? So if we're in G, I don't have to run around. I don't have to stay out all night because I got me a sweet. But, you know, they do their own sort of thing. But if you were to climb back up from the G back to the D, you would usually stay in the key of D where there's a C sharp in there. G, A, B, C sharp, D. I mean, you don't usually run from the fourth to the first up. Usually if you're in the first, if you're in the fourth, you're going to fall back down to the first, right? And then I think that there was a secret one that I was looking to give you guys. Let me think. I guess it was essentially coming from the fifth. From the fifth. So if you're in the fifth, it also sounds good going from the fifth using the 7th to climb down back to the 1st. I just want to show you guys this one, just because I kind of, because I said I would. So if we're in the key of D, down, 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 and we're gonna climb up to the 4th. Now we're in the 5th. That's A. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. So that was from the 5th. You go 5th, minor 7th, 6th. Sorry. I'm thinking that we're in D. Okay. So the A is the 5th. So we would go. My mind's a blank today. I shouldn't have drank so much damn beer. But it's okay. When we are coming from the A as the 5th, we're going to come down to the D again as the 1st. And we're going to think of the A as the 1st. So it's 8, 7, 6, 5, and then 4. The 4th of the A. I guess we should think of it as the D as being the main chord. So when you're coming down from the A, simply the point is that when you're falling back down, we know that there's no A sharp in the key of D. That's the point that I'm trying to get at. When we're falling from the A, keep the same notes that you've been using, which is A, G, F sharp, E, and D. It's the it's hard to use the numbers in this sort of figure because we are running from the 5th to the 1st, down to the 1st, running from the A down to the D. You want to use the 7th of the A. That's my point. Just like a guitarist will, if he's going from the A chord to the D chord, he's going to use the 7th on the A chord a lot of times, right? So that's the secret to that last, from the 5th climbing down to the 1st again. You trample on the 7th of the chord, that being D, right? Folks are yelling at each other about hockey upstairs. Canadians, So hopefully that went well. I can tell that I guess I'm getting tired because I've been doing these videos, but I did want to show the nature of that of those 4 main runs, essentially running from the 1st to the 4th back to the 1st, 1st to the 5th, and then 5th back to the 1st as well. I wanted to show you guys that just because those are key runs that you should start getting in the mindset of whenever you're doing any jamming with other people. I'm just going to close my door. Big hockey night tonight, I guess. So, there are set runs when you bounce between one chord to another chord. There's a set figure there, and it usually goes by whether the chord is major or minor. Having a minor chord will change the nature of your runs in between the chords. This is something that you've just kind of got to feel out. There's always a science. There's always a science between what is the best note to be chosen between one chord structure and the next. If you've got a bass player for a teacher or anything like that, that's the best way to do it. You go to him personally and you say, like my Uncle Rick taught me everything on the bass, and he just knew what to do. He knew the theory. And I would say, Uncle Rick, I'm going from this one to this one, and I can't, for some reason it doesn't sound right. He would say, well, the reason it sounds right is because there's a theory behind how it's supposed to go, behind the exact notes you're supposed to use. And, just go by the theory. So hopefully I didn't just fill you guys full of hope for, this science and then say, all right, everybody, see you later until the next one. But my buddy Jeff has kind of inspired me. Jeff is one of my people who's been watching me on YouTube forever. He suggested that I start doing these bass lessons a little bit more often. I'm kind of pooched today. I can tell that. Excuse me. So I'm not going to do any more for today. But I kind of like the idea of including How to Rock Bass as a part of How to Rock a Campfire. So why don't you folks let me know what you'd think of that? Let me know if you think that it would be cool for me to like teach the bass all the time. Thanks, David Jones, for that help there. And to everybody who's been watching live or whatever else. I might start teaching songs on the bass so that people can see what I mean by these like key riffs and how they can be used anywhere in any song. For now, I hope I've given you guys lots to think about today in terms of like what is it that really makes a bass player? What is it that found the foundation of knowledge and theory that makes one bass player more strong than another? Because knowledge is power. I mean, like, that sounded like an ego trip type thing there. It's not about being better than other bass players, but these are the key elements that make a strong bass player. Practice, jamming, and theory. You won't be a good bass player if you don't have the proper theory to know what it is that you've got to do on the bass. Yeah?
Are you done?
No.
Okay.
So, it's all in the theory, really, for the bass player. Theory, practice, jamming. Jamming the theory and practicing the jamming. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of food for thought, folks. Now, I'm Dustin Cormier here for How to Rock a Campfire. I love doing this live thing. Catch me tomorrow, and I'm going to smoke a joint with you guys live and play some music with you, do some requests, and I'm going to show you guys how I learn songs kind of on the spot. Until then, this has been How to Rock Bass. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought of it. And let me know if this was fruitful for you guys, and if it was and everyone really enjoys it, I'll start doing more bass stuff. Thanks for tuning in, folks. See you next time.